The medical bay's environmental controls hummed steadily as Laura paced before the observation window, her triple-jointed legs clicking against the sterile floor. Beyond the transparent barrier, two Vrexian cubs, apex predators whose adult forms could tear through reinforced hull plating, huddled in the corner of their perfectly designed habitat. They had refused every nutritional supplement, ignored the climatically optimized den, and their distress vocalizations had reached concerning frequencies. "Prognosis remains unchanged," Laura muttered into her recording device, her mandibles twitching with frustration. The cubs continue to reject all standard intervention protocols, survival probability decreasing by the hour. She had spent 2 decades studying xenobiology across 47 species. Never had she encountered such a paradox. The cubs were healthy by every physiological metric. Yet they were dying. Their pack had been killed in a stellar collision 3 cycles ago, and the orphaned cubs had been brought aboard the Harmony's Edge, a diplomatic vessel where Laura served as chief xenobiologist. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. Laura's sensory stalks swiveled backward, detecting the newcomer before she turned. "Human Kren," she acknowledged, her translator rendering the greeting in Standard Galactic. "This area is restricted to medical personnel." Kren stepped inside, his bipedal form moving with that peculiar grace humans possessed, neither the predatory efficiency of Vrexians nor the cautious deliberation of her own species. He wore the simple gray uniform of the engineering crew, and his facial features arranged themselves in what Laura had learned to recognize as concern. "I heard about the cubs," Kren said quietly. "Thought I'd check on them. Your concern is noted but unnecessary. This matter requires scientific expertise. Not..." Laura paused as one of the cubs released another distress call. The sound vibrated through her exoskeleton, triggering instinctive alarm responses. "Not sentiment." Kren moved closer to the window. The cubs, each roughly the size of a human child, despite being less than 2 months old, pressed tighter into their corner. Their iridescent scales, which would eventually harden into biological armor, currently shimmered with stress patterns. "They're scared," Kren observed. "Obviously. Their pack structure has been destroyed. Vrexians are intensely social apex predators. Without proper integration protocols, they're not scared of being alone," Kren interrupted gently. "They're scared of that." He gestured at the habitat, the carefully measured space, the monitored temperature zones, the sterile feeding stations. "It's too perfect, too controlled." Laura's translator crackled as she processed this. "Perfection is distressing? For babies who just watched their family die?" "Yeah." Kren's hand touched the glass. "Everything's too clean, too quiet, too empty. They need chaos. They need..." He trailed off, then turned to her with sudden intensity. "Let me try something." "Absolutely not. Humans are classified as compatible predators with Vrexians. An adult might interpret your presence as a territorial challenge. Even cubs could inflict serious..." "They're dying anyway," Kren said flatly. "What's the harm in trying?" Laura's mandibles worked silently. Regulations warred with pragmatism in her mind. The cubs had perhaps 12 hours remaining before their systems began cascading toward failure. Every protocol had been followed. Every scientific approach had failed. 5 minutes, she finally said. Under direct observation. Any sign of aggression, and I'm flooding the chamber with sedatives. Kren nodded and moved toward the access door. Laura activated every monitoring system available, her multiple eyes tracking his movements as he entered the habitat. The cubs immediately went rigid, their predatory instincts engaging. Low growls rumbled from their developing vocal chambers, sounds that would eventually become roars capable of stunning prey at 50 meters. Kren didn't freeze or retreat. Instead, he sat down on the floor with a heavy thump, his legs crossed in that impossibly flexible way humans managed. He pulled a cushion from the seating area and placed it beside him. Then he began talking, not in Standard Galactic, but in what Laura's translator identified as one of Earth's numerous languages, a flowing, rhythmic sound that seemed to bypass cognition and speak directly to something more primal. The cubs' growling didn't stop, but their posture shifted microscopically. Kren continued his incomprehensible monologue, occasionally gesturing with his hands, his body language completely non-threatening. Minutes passed. Laura's chronometer marked each second as precious time wasted. Then something extraordinary happened. The smaller cub, barely a month old, took one tentative step forward, then another. Its sibling followed, both moving with the halting uncertainty of infants testing boundaries. Kren kept talking, kept moving slowly. When the first cub came within range, he simply extended his hand, not reaching toward it, but leaving it available. The cub sniffed, its chemoreceptor organs analyzing his biochemistry with the precision her instruments couldn't match. Then it pressed against his side. The second cub quickly followed, and within moments, both predators were nestled against Kren's torso, their scaled bodies tucked against his warmth, their distress vocalizations transformed into something else entirely, a deep, resonant vibration that Laura's database identified as a contentment signal, typically reserved for pack leaders. They were purring. Kren carefully positioned the cushion, creating a small nest around the cubs without restricting them. His hands moved with practiced gentleness, and the cubs accepted his touch without resistance. Within 5 minutes, both were breathing steadily, their stress patterns normalizing on Laura's displays. "Impossible," she whispered. Kren looked up at her through the observation window, a small smile on his face. "Cubs don't need perfection, Laura. They need someone who'll sit on the floor with them and make them feel safe." Over the following hours, the cubs continued to thrive in Kren's presence. They accepted food when he offered it. They explored their environment with him as a secure anchor point, and when he carefully extracted himself to return to duty, they settled on the cushion he'd left behind, infused with his scent, carrying his warmth. Laura updated her research logs with meticulous detail, documenting every unprecedented variable. But privately, she acknowledged something that her scientific training had never prepared her for. Humans possessed an almost supernatural ability to forge pack bonds across species barriers. They saw infants where others saw predators. They offered comfort where logic suggested caution. The cubs survived. As they grew aboard the Harmony's edge, they remained bonded to Kren, following him through corridors, sleeping outside his quarters, and eventually becoming protective guardians of the human who'd first shown them that not all aliens were threats, some were family. And Laura, watching this impossible relationship flourish, finally understood what made humans so simultaneously terrifying and remarkable. They were predators who'd evolved to care, survivors who'd weaponized compassion, and conquerors who built families from strangers. The galaxy's apex species had rejected their perfect den because perfection was isolation. They'd found home beside a human's cushion because humans understood something the rest of the galaxy was still learning. Strength wasn't just about claws and armor. Sometimes the most powerful thing in the universe was simply sitting on the floor with someone who was scared and refusing to leave until they felt safe again.